In the midst of the Second World War, the Japanese army transported a number of prisoners of war to its national territory, putting them through an endless labor regime. On the ship known as the Arisan Maru in 1944, the travelers were going about their business as usual, and in one of the cells, a pair of soldiers were freeing Saito, one of their prisoners. Soon after, the members of the ship take the young man outside, and he is amazed to finally be able to see the ocean after being locked inside for so long. Before he could continue enjoying the scenery, the prisoner was pulled into the commander's room, and the man said that since his enemy's sins were unforgivable, he would receive a final punishment. However, the military leader explains that he will use him as an example in front of thousands of people, as he will be eliminated in their territory. Finally, the commander tells him that until they have completed their journey, all the captured men will be treated as they see fit, at which point one of the guards appears with Bronson, a prisoner who has already tried to escape several times. Then the soldiers start hammering new handcuffs into the pair's ankles, and suddenly the ship is hit by dozens of enemy air raids. In the midst of the panic, Bronson and Saito react and begin to fight the soldiers around them, using various melee attacks to push and disarm them. With all his companions defeated, the commander aims his gun at the pair, but before they can be hit, they run outside, at the same time as the room is completely destroyed by one of the missiles, eliminating the captain. Hours later, the fugitives reach dry land, ending up on the beach of a deserted island. After noticing that Bronson is still unconscious, Saito crawls over to the body of one of the guards and manages to grab his gun. However, before he can fire, the young man wakes Bronson, who manages to knock him down and starts to squeeze his neck with his bare hands. Quickly, Saito uses a shell to strike the soldier's head, who falls to the ground dazed, and after taking a few blows, he unbalances his opponent by pulling the chain from his feet. With both of them on their feet, the fugitives exchange several blows in succession, and are so distracted by their fight that they don't even notice that they are being watched by a creature, which is hiding behind one of the rocks. As soon as he manages to knock down his opponent, Bronson lunges at him, causing them both to hit the water. The problem is that the wounds on his legs end up attracting the creature, which smells his blood. Thanks to this, before he can eliminate his opponent, Bronson is swallowed up by the creature and begins to struggle desperately to free himself. Seizing his chance, Saito surrenders the soldier with his gun, but as soon as he notices the creature about to attack him, he fires a clear shot, causing it to back away. Now that he has managed to control the situation, he orders Bronson to walk towards the beach, and a few meters ahead, the man falls to the ground with no energy left due to his injuries. Confused, the soldier asks what that thing was that attacked him, but Saito doesn't answer, and looks around dejected that they're in that situation. Tired of going through all that suffering, the young man prepares to put an end to everything, but is stopped by Bronson, and the man says that they will need to work together if they want to escape from that place. So the pair set off to investigate the wrecked crates on the beach, and during the search, the soldier comes across the body of one of his companions. Remembering that this was one of the youngest members of his allies, Bronson gets angry and grabs Saito, saying that his enemy's people are just a bunch of evil lunatics. Despite this, the soldier tries to contain his anger, and at dusk, the survivors begin to prepare some crabs they caught during the day, and sit down to rest for a while. After making a tombstone for his deceased companion, Bronson tries to put on the boots of one of the soldiers, but the chain prevents him, and Saito offers him lower shoes. However, the man refuses to accept, and soon they are preparing to eat the roasted crabs. The problem is that Bronson doesn't know how to open the animal's body properly, and realizing his companion's difficulty, Saito hands him his already opened crab. During dinner, the men finally manage to introduce themselves to each other, but as neither of them can speak the same language, they are unable to communicate. Now that they have eaten, the survivors unite so that they can free themselves from the chains on their ankles, using one of the tools they found to destroy them. Excited, they celebrate their freedom, but just then the pair notice that something seems to be walking around the bushes. Realizing that they might be in danger, they grab their weapons and approach to find out what's going on, only to discover that two Japanese soldiers have arrived on the island accompanied by a prisoner. Trying to find a way to deal with the enemies, Saito signals Bronson to return to the camp and hands him his machete, asking the man to trust him. The fugitive then runs for cover, at which point the soldiers smell the food being prepared by the survivors and walk over to the spot. As soon as they arrive at the source of the smell, the men come across Saito, who is pretending to be asleep on the floor. Believing that the survivor is just another member of the Japanese army, the soldiers decide to join him in the camp and begin to talk to Saito quietly. At that moment, Bronson notices that the group is being watched by a sinister creature, which is hiding near him, and although he is frightened, he decides to remain still, making the monster move away from him. At the same time, one of the soldiers notices that the camp is full of other people's belongings, and realizes that Saito may be lying to them. The soldiers then decide to surround the fugitive and start asking him where his teammate is. However, Saito tries to deceive them, saying that the man was lost at sea before he could reach the island, and uses the tune made by Bronson to reinforce his story. Despite this, the soldiers don't believe any of it and begin to berate him for betraying his country. Suddenly, everyone hears a loud roar in the distance, and upon hearing the creature's screams, the prisoner begins to pray in terror. Worried, the soldier orders his partner to go and check what it is, and he sets off to check the perimeter, as he needs to stay there to keep Saito surrendered. While he was watching the young fighter, Bronson ended up making a noise in the middle of the woods, attracting the young man's attention, and he began to look in his direction. But before he could find him, the soldier heard another noise coming from the creature and decided to continue his investigation, allowing the fugitive to approach the camp. As he approaches the enemies, Bronson prepares to eliminate the fighter, at which point the young fighter is surprised by a creature, which removes his arm with a single blow, causing him to scream in despair. Taking advantage of the distraction, the fugitive hits the soldier in the neck with his knife, and after retrieving his weapon he runs back into the bushes with Saito. At the same time, the creature uses its super strength to remove the soldier's head, and as it watches the body fall to the ground, it throws the head towards the group. Immediately afterwards, the monster walks towards the camp, and when it sees the soldier lying on the ground, it removes his heart. Panicked, the prisoner runs for his life, but is easily caught by the monster, which makes a powerful leap towards him, destroying his head. Realizing that they will be in danger if they remain there, the survivors begin to run, and are quickly detected by the creature. During the escape, Bronson ends up getting separated from Saito, and thanks to the panic, he falls to the ground. Before he can be attacked by the creature, the man fires in its direction, but misses and has his neck grabbed. Furious, the monster prepares to eliminate his target, but at that moment, Saito strikes him with a sword, allowing the pair to get away from the threat once again. However, the survivors' escape is short-lived, and suddenly the men end up falling down a slope, causing them to roll dozens of meters down the mountain. In the morning, Saito wakes up with a knife stuck in his shoulder, and despite the enormous pain he struggles to remove the blade from his body. At the same time, Bronson regains consciousness on top of a tree trunk, and realizes that he is just above a river, which flows into a large waterfall. Out of desperation, the man falls onto the rock below and desperately tries to hold on, but ends up falling into the river. While searching for his companion, Saito finds something on the riverbank, and is surprised to notice that one of the soldiers' katanas is still intact after all the fighting. The survivors set off through the forest in search of each other, trying to ignore the pain of their injuries so that they can continue their search. During his walk, Bronson stumbles over a rock, and because of the pain of the impact, he screams in pain. Thanks to the noise, which is echoed for hundreds of meters, the creature manages to notice the presence of the survivors, and Saito tries to remain alert so that he won't be surprised. Despite this, the fugitives continue their exploration of the deserted island, walking through the forest in search of their companions and supplies. After traveling a long distance in the shallow waters of the river, Bronson decides to stop on the bank and lie down to rest for a while, as his body is at its limit. Just then, the man hears the sound of something approaching, and when he looks around, he comes across a huge crocodile, which stands next to him watching him. Frightened, the survivor tries to remain still so as not to alert the predator, and after a few seconds the animal takes off, leaving the man alone. Without wasting any time, Bronson runs away from the scene, and when he reaches an open field, he comes across the creature that chased them earlier. Trying not to be spotted, the man crouches down in the tall grass and notices that the monster seems to be using moss to nurse its wounds. While observing the creature, Bronson ends up breaking a stick on the ground, causing him to alert the beast to his presence. Annoyed, the monster scans the surrounding area for the intruder, but at that moment he is surprised by a river creature, which pulls him into the water. Observing the situation, Bronson notices that the surprise attack was carried out by the crocodile he had encountered earlier, but what he didn't realize was that the monster wasn't even hurt, and after returning to the surface, he splits the crocodile's body in half. In shock at the creature's level of strength, the survivor decides to walk away, and on the other side of the forest, while walking along the riverbank, Saito finds a piece of life-saving equipment, which seems to have been left by one of the soldiers. At that moment, the survivor hears the creature's screams, and frightened, he decides to run away. Minutes later, Saito finds a military suit hanging from a tree in the dense area of the forest, but as soon as he gets closer, he realizes that it's actually the body of a soldier, and he gets a big fright. Thanks to this, the survivor ends up falling into a trap, causing him to get stuck in a hole in the ground, and when he looks to the side he comes across the body of one of those creatures he spotted earlier. Realizing that the monster is no longer alive, and has been there for some time, the man manages to calm down, and on climbing out of the hole he decides to investigate the soldier's body. After finding a photograph of the deceased's possible wife, Saito returns the object to his suit pocket, and soon afterwards he sees a gun in the soldier's hand, and realizes that the man was the one who managed to eliminate the creature. Saito then decides to take the fighter's gun and sets off to look for Bronson, ending up in the middle of a large lake with the wreckage of what looked like an airplane. In search of some supplies, the fugitive swims cautiously towards the wreckage and begins to investigate the surroundings, allowing him to see something nearby. As dusk falls, Bronson continues to walk through the forest, and when he comes across an aircraft wing lying on the ground, he rushes to the scene looking for the rest of the aircraft. Thanks to this, the man manages to reach the plane in a few seconds, and so that he can defend himself, he decides to make a handmade spear, consisting of a large branch together with a sharp stone. After preparing himself, Bronson walks over to the aircraft with his spear, and while investigating the cockpit, he finds a crate containing some of the soldiers' belongings, such as a flare gun. Soon after, the survivor notices that the plane seems to have an emergency axe hidden in the side of the seat, and tries to reach out for it, but ends up slipping, preventing him from grabbing the object. Before he can try again, Bronson sees an armament positioned next to the aircraft, and upon analyzing it, he realizes that it is actually a bombing missile. Realizing that he needs to rest for a while before continuing to explore, the man sits down on the wing, and while resting, he is surprised by Saito. After noticing that his friend is all right, the fugitive takes the lighter from his hands and asks him to follow him. Despite being confused, Bronson follows his friend's requests, and after entering a cave next to the waterfall, they make their way through the place using the lighter as a source of light. As soon as they reach the center of the cave, the pair come across a kind of web spread across the walls, with a large egg in the center. As they approach, Bronson prepares to destroy the baby before it can hatch, but Saito stops him, trying to show him that they shouldn't do that. Irritated, the soldier insists on his plan and says that they can't allow that creature to live on. Furthermore, the man explains that in the current situation, there is no room for mercy, and he does not intend to allow those monsters to continue reproducing on the island. At this point, Bronson has an idea of how to deal with that egg, and asks Saito to follow him. On the other side of the forest, the creature finds the hole with the body of another of its kind, and on examining the place, it realizes that the soldier trapped in the tree was responsible for it. At the same time, the island creature realizes that the combatant seemed to be holding an object, which was removed from his hands. Back at the lake, Bronson reveals the missile that was hidden in the wreckage of the aircraft, and asks Saito to help him carry it into the cave. With a lot of effort, the pair manage to carry the object to the creature's nest, and on finding an activation fuse, Bronson tries to use his flare gun to remove it, but to no avail. After realizing that he won't be able to move the fuse that way, the survivor remembers the emergency axe he found on the plane, and says that they can use the tool to hit the missile and blow up the cave. The problem is that in order to do this, one of them will have to remain there, and will probably be hit by the explosion. On hearing this, Saito says that his life has brought him to this place for a reason, implying that he is ready to sacrifice himself for his companion if necessary. The pair then go outside, and after firing a flare, Bronson hands his spear to his friend, allowing the man to cover him while he tries to get the emergency axe. In a few seconds, Saito is faced with the creature right in front of him, and decides to hold up his two melee weapons to fight it. In a rage, the creature lunges at the survivor, who strikes several blows with his blades, but he is quickly disarmed and dodges to get away from his enemy. Soon afterwards, Saito attacks the creature with several kicks, pushing it against the aircraft and allowing Bronson to hit it with several axe blows. With all those attacks, the monster moves a few meters away, and the man reunites with his partner so that they can intimidate the enemy. Just then, the survivors realize that the flare has gone out, and as soon as they look back at the creature, they notice that it seems to have gone away. Seizing their chance, the pair make their way to the missile and Bronson tries to use his axe to trigger the fuse, while Saito protects the entrance with his katana. What they didn't realize was that the creature was hiding right behind them, and before he could protect himself, Bronson ended up being hit by the creature's arm. Furious, Saito unleashes a powerful slash across the monster's body. However, before he could make another attack, the man was thrown away, so that he could do nothing but watch as his companion was hit once again. Bronson then starts screaming, and in a rage Saito grabs his gun, firing a shot right into the creature's eye, which stops the attack. The survivor then tries to hit the creature with another shot, but misses and decides to put an end to it. After concentrating, Saito fires right at the center of the egg, which is completely destroyed, causing the baby to fall to the ground, crashing into several surrounding rocks. Thanks to this, the creature walks over to its chick to check that it is still alive, allowing the man to run over to Bronson, who says that he needs to leave. Without wasting any time, the soldier hands his necklace to his friend and shouts for him to leave the cave immediately. Although he doesn't want to do it, Saito realizes that he won't be able to save his partner, and after retrieving his katana, he sets off towards the exit. Wanting revenge for what he put him through, Bronson uses his axe to hit the missile's fuse, causing it to finally activate. The man then faces the creature as they are both consumed by the flames of the explosion, and Saito is shocked to witness the loss of his brave friend. The survivor then begins to walk back to the beach, but when he looks back, he realizes that the monster is still alive. After a terrifying chase through the dense forest, Saito manages to reach the shore, and realizing that there is no escape, he decides to stay there and fight his enemy. As soon as it reaches the beach, the creature sees its target kneeling in the sand, and rushes to surprise him, but what it didn't know was that it was only the body of one of the soldiers, who had been positioned as a distraction. At that moment, Saito emerges from under the ground and unleashes a powerful attack on the creature, which manages to hit him with its claws at the same time. Now that they are face to face, the man challenges the monster to a direct fight, and after making a lunge towards his opponent, Saito lands a large cut on its body. The survivor then hits the creature in the stomach with his katana, finally defeating the island monster. Now that his enemy is incapacitated, Saito walks towards it, but as much as he wants to eliminate it once and for all, he decides not to and spares the creature's life. After that, the survivor takes the flare gun from his backpack, and when he turns around he notices that the monster is no longer there, having run into the woods to hide. Saito then walks to the beach and tries to fire the flare gun, but at that moment, he discovers that the weapon no longer has any ammunition. Disappointed that his life had ended this way, the man falls to the ground with no strength left, and before leaving, he looks at his friend's necklace one last time, then falls unconscious. A year later, at dawn, a huge USS ship finds Saito on the beach, and after rescuing him and treating his wounds, they begin to question him about the Japanese ship that sank. In addition, the officers ask about the identity of Private Bronson, as well as why the man was taken prisoner by his own country. Saito explains that he was responsible for eliminating his superior, because he couldn't stand to see several colleagues being eliminated for no reason. The officers then ask about Bronson, and the man is paralyzed as he remembers all the things he went through alongside his teammate, and looking out of the window at the island, he says that Bronson was his best friend. The USS ship then sets off towards the horizon, leaving the island deserted and being watched by the creature, which waits until its next victims come to visit it in its territory.